Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Mailbox for the 2nd of January 2012. God, that was almost 11, wasn't it? Ugh. I'm going to be doing that for a while, I think. My name is TotalBiscuit, bringing you your daily dose of community interaction, gaming discussion, and all that good stuff. You can email in mailbox@cynicalbrit.com, that is mailbox@cynicalbrit.com, with topics for future shows. This email comes in from Mad Driver that says, I've been playing the Old Republic for a while, and I just realized I missed one thing: galaxy exploration and actual space combat. That's two things. Don't get me wrong, the game has some very well done features and mechanics, but unfortunately lacks in the actual Star Wars department. I don't mind on-rail shooters, they were fun, but they are suitable for low-budget indie games rather than AAA titles with millions of dollars in budget and promotion. Just for reference, Star Trek Online, which will be going free to play in January, has an unlimited number of planets and star systems to explore, and the space combat has no limits other than map boundaries to movement. Not to mention that ships and ship interiors can be easily customized, and the game had all of these features at launch. That's a very important aspect. I believe that investing in actual space combat was too much of a risk for EA, as they were mostly trying to attract WoW players, and it is because of this that Star Wars The Old Republic has a deja vu feeling to it. My question is, do you think that BioWare and EA were too afraid to divert from the recipe that made WoW popular and went on to more simplistic and a safer approach when designing The Old Republic? It seems like they just wanted to check space combat and space exploration on the feature list, not caring about how good a mechanic it actually is. They just wanted it in-game. It is a game with at least 10 times the budget of the aforementioned Star Trek Online, and in my opinion has failed to meet the standards of space combat one would expect from a game based in the Star Wars franchise. Even Star Wars Battlefront 2 had better space combat than this. Yeah, but Knights of the Old Republic didn't, which is what you should be directly comparing it to. This is a Old Republic game. This is Knights of the Old Republic 3, essentially. They did it in MMO format for God knows what reason, but they did. So, as far as I'm concerned, that's the game you should be comparing it to, and space combat in both Knights of the Old Republic and Knights of the Old Republic 2, with the original game being regarded as one of the best Star Wars games ever made, did not have space combat. They had... It wasn't even on rails in the way that the Old Republic is. It was a turret segment that was annoying and didn't serve any purpose and was clunky, and didn't even give you any benefits other than letting you go to the next bit. It was a waste of space. So as far as I'm concerned, that's what it should be compared to. If we want to talk about Star Trek Online, you should probably also mention that the space combat was the only redeeming factor of the entire game. The rest of it was absolutely awful. There's no question. Ground combat in that game, which is what the majority of the missions sadly involved you doing, was abysmal. Incredibly bad. I have never played ground combat that bad in anything. God, I played that game when it first came out. I got involved in that, and I loved the space combat. It was kind of like a simplified version of Starfleet Command. And I love Starfleet Command, it was a great series. But essentially what Star Trek Online was a simplified version of Starfleet Command with an MMO part plugged into it. Now, you could say the same thing about the Old Republic if you like, a simplified version of Knights of the Old Republic with an MMO part plugged into it. I think it's less true, honestly. I think that ToR does stand out as an Old Republic game. If we're honest, combat in Knights of the Old Republic was not very good. I mean, it wasn't. Would anyone claim that that was a good combat system? It was basically based on a D20 roll system and required barely any skill whatsoever. In fact, most of the time you could just simply mash abilities and win. Now, to some degree, this is true in the Old Republic as well, but I'd say that there's significantly more involved in the combat than there was in Knights, so that's certainly something to consider there as well. The thing is, they've already said they want to make the space combat better. I think that in its current form, it's a nice little diversion. I don't feel that it is where it needs to be, but I also don't feel that exploring the galaxy is actually required. In fact, I would take that the hell away from my BioWare game. This is why I'm kind of scared about Dragon Age, because Dragon Age 3 is supposed to have more of an open world aspect to it, along the lines of Skyrim. No, 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 please no. BioWare is best when it comes to storytelling in a directed fashion. It's about making choices, it's not about exploring. It never has been about exploring. BioWare does best when it gives you set pieces, it gives you storylines, and it gives you characters to learn about and interact with. That is what it's best at. It doesn't need to be doing all of this galaxy exploration stuff, and honestly, if you went to most of the planets in Star Trek Online, they were kind of lame. They were generally extremely small areas that were enclosed by rock formations or whatever, and where you go and shoot 6 Klingons, and that wasn't exploring. You didn't really find anything there, if I'm honest. The whole scanning anomalies thing was incredibly dull as well. It's like, beam down to planet and scan this. What's the point? There's no storyline there. What made Star Trek, the actual series, cool is they find this planet and something happens there that is kind of unique, and that didn't happen in Star Trek Online. And I don't think it would happen in a BioWare game either, so I don't think exploring the galaxy is a good idea. I think that creating new planets and having new storylines and people to meet and choices to make is the best thing that they can possibly do. So ignoring the whole randomly generated thing would be a good idea. And if we were to talk about space combat, then there's a lot that can improve there, and they've already said they want to improve it. So I don't see what the problem is, honestly. It's cool that they want to do something with that. I think it's very important that they do eventually. And yes, space combat is a very integral part of Star Wars, but it is not the only thing about Star Wars. And more importantly, it's not the only thing about the Old Republic. That's the most important thing to consider. Space battles in the modern era of Star Wars? Absolutely. Death Star trench runs, Battle of Endor, so on and so forth, everything that's in the expanded universe after the destruction of the second Death Star, definitely. That stuff's really important. Space battles in the Old Republic, they're not as integral to the storyline. Honestly, what's really interesting is finding out what the Star Wars universe is like in a previous era and learning about how things got to this point and seeing the parallels to what ends up happening in the original trilogy and things like that. That's what intrigues me, character development and storytelling and even the political situation and things like that. That's the legendary stuff. That's the stuff that actually has impact. I don't feel that space combat is necessary to make a good Old Republic game. It hasn't been necessary for the past two, why would it be now? But the fact of the matter is, it's in the game in a basic form and they're going to expand on it, and I'm okay with that. I don't think this is necessarily chickening out by BioWare and EA. I think it's following the original Knights of the Old Republic formula, which is, we don't care about space combat. It is irrelevant. Storytelling and ground combat and things like that are what matters, and Old Republic does that really well. This one comes in from Jono that says this: I love Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine and really enjoy the multiplayer, but I'm a bit worried that people will stop playing it soon. With the maximum level capped at 41, which makes sense with it being set in the 41st millennium, once people get to 41, which only takes about 10 hours, they'll stop playing and all matches will be full of noobs that don't know what a bolter is. Do you think this will happen, and do you think there's anything that will prevent it? Would adding other species in that you have to level up separately solve the problem, like adding Eldar, Orcs, and Tyranids to play? But as a free update rather than DLC, I would love to hear your views on this. This is a really good question, not because of Space Marine, but actually because of the idea of treadmill gaming in general. This has become a massive problem, in my opinion, across multiplayer gaming, in that people play for the progress, they don't play for the experience. What you've just mentioned is a prime example of that in action. If they hit the maximum level and they've unlocked everything and then they stop playing, then that means the game wasn't that good to begin with. And in fact, you've seen for the longest time the Modern Warfare games with their prestige system, and you can now do that in other games as well, including Battlefield, if I recall correctly. Putting that there so that people can set themselves another goal. It's like, oh, you've achieved all the goals, now do them again with a slightly shinier button. That's a massive problem. Does anyone else think that that's a massive problem when it comes to game development? When the hell did that happen? I can get behind persistent character progression. I can get behind goal-driven gameplay. What I can't get behind is the goal being the sole reason. And this might sound cheesy, but it's not the end destination that matters. It's the journey that's supposed to be enjoyable. When I dip into Modern Warfare 3, which I now can do because there is a third-party FOV tool, so I don't get headaches anymore. I'll give you a link in the description below this video if you're interested. I play it because I want a bit of mindless fun. The progression is actually irrelevant to me. Modern Warfare is the game that I play when I've, say, played too much StarCraft and like, oh, this is too hard, this is too stressful. I'm going to play a game that requires no brains of any description. So I play Modern Warfare and I get a few kill streaks and blow some dudes up and people rage and I leave. Okay, cool. Whatever. But there are people that take Modern Warfare very seriously as a treadmill, as opposed to an actual fun game. Do you enjoy the gameplay of Modern Warfare, or do you want the unlocks? Are you solely driven by the unlocks? WoW's a great example of this, because that, in terms of a game, has some very unenjoyable elements, including, as far as I'm concerned, the entire damn combat system. Now, people were saying, oh, I'm going to PvP because I want this. It's like, but you don't like PvP, but I want this. But you don't enjoy what you're doing. It's the same with dailies. Like, do you really enjoy this stuff? No, I'm doing it for a goal. MMOs are the prime example of this in action, but this is starting to pervade other forms of gaming. FPS, the first one, as you can see. Third-person shooters, in the sense of Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine, have it as well. And it seems to be almost mandatory for there to be a progression system. I think one of the best examples of this not happening, even though there's a progression system in the game, is Section 8 Prejudice. We were actually playing on our server with it being on unranked for ages, and nobody cared because they were having a blast. It's like, well, I'm not getting level ups. Whatever. The game is fun. That's why I'm playing it. I hate the fact that so many games are getting to this point where if people reach the maximum level and there's nothing for them to do, then they just leave. I can understand it with an MMO, where very much progression is actually extremely important, progression and social interaction. But with a first-person shooter, if I'm not playing that FPS because I enjoy that FPS, I shouldn't be playing it at all. The gameplay should matter the most. And it's a comment that you hear from a lot of people in that they say, though this game is grindy. And I say, what grind? Where's the grind? Oh, the progression curve takes ages. Like, that's not a grind. The grind, the initial definition of grinding, when it first came around and came to be coined as a phrase during the era of mods, was the idea of kind of grinding your face against the stone, you know? It was doing something incredibly repetitive simply to achieve a goal. You weren't enjoying it. It's actually a very unpleasant experience, but you do it because you want the end goal, and the end goal to you matters more than the pain in the ass that whatever you're doing happens to be in order for you to reach that destination. And I absolutely disagree with the idea that that should be happening. I've been through a lot of it. I have gone through the grind when it comes to MMOs, and I don't want to do that kind of thing anymore. And it's kind of the reason, say, I enjoy the Old Republic, because I don't feel like I'm grinding, because I'm there for the storytelling, and the combat's kind of fun as well. But I have a feeling that if it got to that point, once I reached endgame, then I would certainly stop playing it, because I can't be bothered. If your game dies at that stage, it's indicative of one of two things. One, the game isn't fun enough, and it's reliant on its progression system because people want the shinies. Or two, there's a real problem with certain gamers today, in that they are so obsessed with progression that they don't care about the actual experience. It's probably a combination of both, honestly, and one certainly leads to the other. This one comes in from Daniel that says this: "Hey TB, I recently purchased Assassin's Creed 2 on Steam sale. Since then, I've not been able to play the game due to a bug with the Ubisoft starter portal that I have not yet been able to resolve on my PC. Reading through forums, I've found others having the same problem that I have, and I'm feeling rather upset with Steam for putting a game on sale that is unplayable for many people. Do you feel that it's incumbent upon Steam to ensure that the games they sell or put on sale meet a minimum level of unbugginess before allowing that game to be sold? If so, do you feel online distribution platforms have a responsibility greater than brick-and-mortar retail stores?" Well, the problem is that the responsibility of brick-and-mortar retail stores varies from country to country. I can give you my experience from the UK, having worked in a games brick-and-mortar retail store quite a while ago. The Sale of Goods Act is what governs an awful lot of it, and generally it comes down to if the device or product of whatever is not fit for purpose, then they're entitled to a full refund. It's really as simple as that. And that's incumbent upon the retail store to provide that, because that's how the chain of supply works. They go to the retailer, and the retailer gives them their money back, and then the retailer says to the manufacturer, hey, what the hell, sort this out, refund us this, because we had to just give money back for that. And that's generally how it ends up working out. I remember a specific instance, actually. Dark Messiah of Might and Magic, until that got patched, it didn't run on most machines, mine included, so we had a lot of refunds on that game, and technically you're not supposed to refund PC games, but really, we had to. I mean, under the Sale of Goods Act, we are supposed to do that, and then we take it up with the manufacturer after that, and deal with it. Steam doesn't do a huge amount of that, although I have seen it happen from time to time. If you send them a mail nicely saying, oh, it's broken, then yes, they will refund you, but a lot of the sales are final when it comes to Steam, and a lot of refunds simply do not happen. The thing is, Steam is an American company, so it's not governed by things like the Sale of Goods Act, and having lived in the States for a little while and seen what goes on there, I would imagine the consumer protection laws are significantly weaker over there than they are in European countries, for instance. I do certainly believe there should be some testing going on. I really, really do. I think in the case of the game you're talking about, that game's been out for a while, and this problem's only started recently, I would imagine. I don't know anything specifically about the problem. It may be that it's been around for the entire time, but I certainly don't remember anyone having problems with the starter portal, but maybe it was buried under the whole complaints about the DRM, or maybe it's even associated with that. The thing is that you can't really predict that that's going to happen, because it could be downtime due to the fact that Ubisoft screwed something over the Christmas period. Who knows? Maybe it's a traffic problem in that a lot of people bought Assassin's Creed 2, and they should have, because it's a great game, and it was really low price, and then it's hit the portal pretty hard, and there's been problems with the system. That's not really Steam's fault, and I don't think this temporary incidental problem should be something that Steam acts upon, because stuff like online portals and servers and things like that, they go down, and they have problems that are certainly outside of Steam's control, but the thing is, those problems are going to be temporary, and issuing a full refund for a temporary problem doesn't seem to be a particularly reasonable thing, and I would certainly not expect Steam to do that. I don't believe that they have to. If a game is absolutely broken upon launch in the fact that the vast majority of people are having issues with it, then refunds should certainly be happening. If I recall correctly, the policy for Valve is to allow one refund, and then after that, you're going to have a bit of an issue with it. I have to wonder just how accountable the publishers are held by digital platforms. I know that in the brick-and-mortar industry, as I said, it goes back up the chain in the way that it does with every other product. If you buy a washing machine and it doesn't work, you take it back and you either get a replacement or you get a refund, and then the store has to deal with the manufacturer and say, oh, this is broken, sort it out. And broken games and things like that, yes, we did actually send back. I remember packing them up. Games that didn't work, games that were too scratched when they got here or whatever, and yes, some games did come scratched because of manufacturing faults or whatever, or they came with blank discs, or there were missing parts of the manual or something like that. Yeah, they got shipped back to the distributor and then back to the manufacturer eventually. It was a long process, but does that work with the digital platform? Probably not. And I don't know how accountable they are really holding the publishers for that, because they become the distributor at that point. So they kind of have a double liability as both the retailer and the distributor. So can they go back to the publisher and reclaim that money? Who knows? They should be able to. And I think, say, a game like Rage, for instance, that was broken on launch for anyone using an ATI card, that should have been a refund situation where they should have put, one, a warning up saying do not buy this yet if it's on an ATI card, and secondly, yes, they should have refunded everyone that had problems with it. Now, I know they refunded some people, but is that a case of using your one refund? Because I'm pretty sure there's been more than one game come out on PC this year that's been broken as hell on release. I can give a prime example, Batman. That was absolutely balked in a variety of different ways, including the DirectX 11 mode simply not working, and even now, apparently, it's losing save files. Ugh. Being a PC game is a pain in the ass, and it's annoying because it's harder to get your game refunded simply because it's either digital or it uses a key, and once you've used the key, you're effectively screwed. Yeah, it's a nasty situation. I think that a lot has got to be done with it, and I think to the degree that I've just explained, Steam and other platforms do have to assume liability as long as they're able to reclaim the money back from the publisher. If that's not happening, then you can understand why they're being a little bit furtive on the issue. Alright folks, that's me done for the day. Thank you very much for watching the Mailbox. We are on a fairly normal schedule again, I would think, so expect the usual content going forward. I shall see you next time.
By enemy.
Bike inbound.
Control point successfully hacked.